How's it going, metalheads? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. Today we're going to be discussing 10 bands that I dislike or that I never really got into. Just a disclaimer, these are all my opinion. These are not anybody else's opinion or facts by any means. You can have your own opinion about these bands. You can be super into these bands, that's great. You can hate these bands, that's great. It makes no difference to me. This is just my opinion. I'm putting it out there. Also a disclaimer, most of these bands I don't hate. There's really only one or two of them that I dislike as musical artists. The rest of them I just really never got into, but they're still important to the metal scene and stuff like that. So yeah, let's get started. And as a bonus at the end, I'm going to tell you 4 bands that aren't really necessarily metal, but 4 artists that if you put them on, I will walk out of the room. So the first band that I never really got into is Sleep Token. I know they're blowing up right now. I know they put out a new album and whatever, announced it. And I never really got into them. I tried to get into them a little bit. And I know they're doing great things for metal scene in terms of like getting out to more people. But I just never really got into them. I never liked that kind of music and stuff like that. And same goes for the next band, Spirit Box. I know a lot of people like Spirit Box. I know they're, blowing up right now, doing a bunch of huge tours, albums and stuff. And, it's good for metal, but just never really got into them. So yeah, those two, like I said, those two are, kind of, I don't necessarily dislike them, just never really got into them. One band I do dislike is Limp Bizkit. I think Fred Durst is a dick, and I don't think that, aside from Break Stuff, which is a decent track, I don't think they have any good songs, and I think that they're just a bunch of idiots. Actually, the rest of the band is pretty cool, aside from Fred Durst, but I dislike them. And then another band that I dislike musically and talently, is that a word? I don't know. Is New Motley Crue. Old Motley Crue is phenomenal. First couple albums is basically how I got into metal. Kickstart My Heart was one of the first, metal songs I guess you could say I heard, and it really, started my metal journey. But New Motley Crue, in terms of live performances with Vince Neil, and also new songs, it's just not good, man. It just sucks. The new EP they put out is really bad, and Vince Neil is a fat fuck who cannot perform anymore, and it's really sad, because they used to be one of the greatest hair metal bands. And I still do think that their old albums are some of the greatest hair metal albums, but not now. So yeah. The next band on my list is Death Angel. Out of the Big 8, if you don't know the Big 8, it's the Big 4, which is Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth, and then Death Angel, Overkill, Exodus, and the 8th one is... Why am I blanking? Death Angel, Overkill, Exodus. Seriously. Oh, and Testament. Jesus Christ. Sorry about that. I should be better. Testament's one of my favorite thrash metal bands. Anyway, yeah, so out of the Big 8, Death Angel is just really one I never got into. I know they're really important to thrash metal and stuff like that, and I like a few of their tracks. It's just I never really got into them that much. I don't think they're bad or anything. They have some cool guys in the band. I like what the vocalist is doing with Kerry King and his solo band, stuff like that. I just don't think that I ever got into them that much. The next band on my list is pretty obvious. I don't like As I Lay Dying. I think their music sucks, and I think Tim Lambesis should be put in prison again for the stuff that's coming out about him. But I think everybody kind of shares that sentiment around metal and, the music community, so I won't spend too much time on that. One that's interesting on my list is I'm not a big Blood Incantation fan. I do have one of their albums on CD over here, Hidden History of the Human Race, and I think it's decent. But at the same time, I never really got into them. I know they just really blew up last year with Absolute Elsewhere. Everybody was freaking out about it. I know Mike Portnoy put out a thing about it, as one of his favorite albums, which is pretty cool. And I know they're great for the Colorado metal scene, which is where I'm from, so that's pretty cool, but they're too ambient for me. I like more chuggy death metal. I like more, melodic stuff too. They're just too ambient for me and too out there, so I never really got into them. Although I don't dislike them in any way. I think they're great for metal and the Colorado metal scene and stuff. I just never really got into them. And then the last 3 bands is just the same thing. I never really got into them. I know a lot of people like them. It's Deftones, Soundgarden, and Radiohead. I know some of those aren't really metal bands, and I know I have a lot of friends who like them, but I just never really got into them at all. Yeah, just didn't really like any of their songs. And I'll add a bonus 11th band is Tool. There's a couple Tool tracks I like. I just think they're too long, and I don't know, just too out there for me. So yeah, those are 11 bands, I guess, now that, I dislike, or that I am not big on. Not really dislike. I guess I'll title this, I am not big on those bands. And here's a bonus, 4 artists that if you put on, I will walk out of the room. So the first one is probably pretty obvious to most metalheads. It's Taylor Swift. I'm sure she's a perfectly nice person, and she has a lot of talent. But I can't stand her music. I think it is all the same subject and, music, so I will just leave. Same with Justin Bieber. I know a lot of people like him. I'm sure he's a nice guy, whatever, but just, I'm not going to listen to him. Maroon 5, same deal. Just, sure, they're nice people. I just dislike their music. And whatever, Adam Levine is a weirdo, so. And Coldplay is the 4th one. Never really got into them. Dislike their music. Don't put them on when I come in. Although, if we're hanging out, we'll probably be listening to metal, so that's cool. Anyways, hope y'all are doing well. That was 11 bands that I am not big on, plus 4 more that I dislike. So, have a nice day. See ya.